Hey, entrepreneurs, your challenge this week is to think of one way that you can restructure your environment in such a way that it supports one of your primary goals for showing up to work with energy, consistency, or better focus. And one easy way to do this is just to ask yourself, what's one habit or mentality or strategy that you know works, that you know is a good idea, but you failed to really use it as often as you should. You know you've slacked off or let yourself slip a little bit in that area. Whatever that is, just ask yourself if you can come up with just one simple way to change your environment in such a way that your environment makes it easier to do the right thing and harder to forget about it. One of the ways that you see this in action a lot is with military members going through training where they're just surrounded by structure and other people who are challenging them to go to their highest level. Everyone in their group, everyone they socialize with while they're going through, let's say, a boot camp away from their normal living environment, gets up at the same time, goes through the same process, is given high, hard goals to strive for, does so together while being challenged to try to reach for uh, a higher level of performance. And there's something about that that brings out the best in people. In fact, some people who train in that arena say that there's never a time where you'll see somebody reach quite that high of a level of performance as they do when they're surrounded by peers and structure of that nature. They'll never be better than they are in that sort of environment. And so if that's true, if we know that we as humans tend to rise to the level of what the environment is drawing out in us and calling for, what can you do to just take one simple step toward making it easier to just fall naturally into the pattern that brings out the best in you? A lot of times when I ask people to think of something like this, they think of changing their peer group, like that concept that you are kind of the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, which is a good idea. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's a very big ask, right? It's not a micro step towards productivity. Another one is change your living situation. If you're the kind of person who rooms with people who sleep in till 11 o'clock after staying up drinking till 2 a.m. and they eat fast food and leave the wrappers all over the place, it's hard for you to get up and creep out of the place at 4:30 in the morning when it's dark and you're trying to be quiet and you have people that just aren't supporting that, compared to if you were with other people who say, hey, let's set the automatic devices to turn on the lights and the music so we all get up at 5:30 and we're gonna hit the ground running. We're gonna make so much progress by noon that we can take some time off and just relax. That's a different environment, right? You can make changes like that. One of my favorites, though, is something that's a little outside the box, and it came from some work I was doing trying to evaluate various SOP software solutions, and one of them was Get Guru, where you can actually set it up to where if you get to a certain part of, let's say, your Salesforce process, a certain URL or clicking on a certain category of person will pop up the sort of the best practice questions you should ask if you're, let's say, have a team member on a sales call. It gives you the relevant best practice template, the SOP for, ask these questions, don't skip any of these steps. And it just makes it harder to not use your SOP system because it's right there in your face. It automatically pops up. So it's easier just to go along with the template than it is to be that lazy person who says, yeah, I know I created an SOP for that, but I just don't want to follow it. I don't want to dig it up. And so if you can change your environment in that kind of way, it often makes it easier to follow through with your habits. I was talking earlier today with one of my clients about his desire to show up with more energy, to bring a higher level of intent and energy every time he sits down to do some copywriting. And it's not that he doesn't show up, he's got the discipline to show up, but sometimes he doesn't show up with the same level of intention and energy that unleashes the creativity, that unleashes the best version of him. And so we talked about how can we engineer your environment in that kind of circumstance. And it can be as simple as making it hard to access that document where you do your copywriting without having an SOP right there in front of your face, your best practice template that reminds you to first pause, set your intention. And then it reminds you of a few things, like every time you try to write a paragraph, first think of at least 3 metaphors, just brainstorm 3 metaphors, even if they're not good ones, and then only pick the best one. Whatever that is for you, whatever your best practice methods are, create an environment, essentially, by having a template, by having an SOP that you use for something that requires the best to come out of you, whether that's showing up for a sales call for your agency, or whether that's developing the right mindset right before you walk into a team meeting. create some sort of template that you follow. And sometimes those templates, those SOPs, can actually, in a way, be a part of the environment that naturally draws out the best in you. I challenge you to think of just one thing you haven't done as well as you could when it comes to your own peak performance as an entrepreneur, and see if you can structure just one tiny change in your environment to make it more likely that you just succeed automatically. Hope that's useful to you. It's going to be as useful as you make it based on how much energy and intent you bring to this idea. So I encourage you to take it seriously. It's easier than it probably sounds. Talk to you again next week.